My daughter-in-law told me to listen or leave. My son stayed quiet. So I left with my bags. 3 days later, my phone rang 111 times. Before we start, please click subscribe and tell me in the comments what your favorite food is. I remember the day everything changed. It was a Tuesday morning. I was making breakfast in my kitchen. The kitchen I had owned for 30 years. My son David and his wife Jessica sat at the table. Their daughter Lily was still sleeping upstairs. I made eggs and toast like I did every morning. Jessica looked at the eggs and frowned. She didn't like how I cooked them. She wanted them different. I smiled and said I would make new ones. But she shook her head. She said something that made my heart feel heavy. You need to follow my rules in this house now. I looked at my son. David just looked down at his plate. He said nothing. He didn't tell her this was my house. He just stayed quiet. I felt something break inside me. This was my home. I had lived here since David was a baby. Paid for everything. The walls, the roof, the floors he walked on as a child. I remember when David was small. He would run through these rooms laughing. He called me his hero. Now he sat quiet while his wife told me what to do. I finished making breakfast. Nobody talked. The room felt cold even though the sun was shining through the windows. After breakfast I went to my room. I sat on my bed. The same bed I had slept in for so many years. I looked at old photos on my wall. Pictures of David smiling. Pictures of us at the park. Pictures of birthday parties and holidays. That happy little boy felt far away now. I could hear Jessica talking in the next room. Her voice was loud. She was telling David what we should do with my furniture. My furniture that I had bought and cared for. She wanted to change my house. Paint the walls. Move my things. Throw away my favorite chair. I heard David agree with everything she said. He never said no to her. He never said this was his mother's house. Felt so alone. Like a stranger in my own home. That night at dinner, I tried to talk about putting up new pictures in the living room. Pictures of our family. Jessica put down her fork. She looked at me with angry eyes. This is not your choice anymore. You just live here. Her words felt like stones hitting me. I looked at David, my son. The boy I raised by myself after his father left. David, please say something, I whispered. He looked at his plate. His hands were shaking a little. Then he looked up at me. And he nodded. He agreed with her. My own son. He chose her side. Jessica smiled. Listen to me or get out, she said. The words hung in the air like smoke. I stood up from the table. My chair made a loud sound on the floor. I didn't yell. I didn't cry in front of them. I walked to my bedroom. Closed the door. I sat in the dark. Through the wall I could hear them talking and laughing. Like nothing had happened. Like they didn't just tell me to leave my own house. I looked at the picture by my bed. David when he was 6. Sitting on my shoulders. Both of us smiling big smiles. I had taken him to the zoo that day. We ate ice cream and looked at elephants. He told me I was the best mom in the world. That little boy seemed like a dream now. Someone I had imagined. Through the wall their voices got louder. They were watching TV. Jessica laughed at something. Like everything was normal. Like they hadn't just broken my heart. I lay on my bed. I didn't sleep all night. I just stared at the ceiling. The ceiling I had painted white 15 years ago. Morning came. The sun came through my window. But I had already made my choice during the dark night. I heard sounds from the kitchen. Cabinets opening. Water running. Lily asking for her favorite cereal. Normal morning sounds. But nothing felt normal anymore. I couldn't stay here. Not as a guest in my own house. By 9 o'clock, I had my suitcase on my bed. I packed my clothes slowly. One shirt. Then another. My shoes. My toothbrush. The picture of David as a boy. I left most of my things behind. This wasn't me giving up. This was me being smart. From downstairs the TV got very loud. Some sports game. Jessica making sure I knew they were comfortable. Making sure I knew they didn't need me. I folded my clothes with careful hands. My hands didn't shake. I wouldn't let them see me cry. I heard footsteps in the hallway. David stood in my doorway. His eyes were red, like he had been crying. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Tears ran down his face. But he didn't speak. He didn't say sorry. He didn't ask me to stay. He just stood there crying silently, like his tears could talk for him. But tears aren't words. Closed my suitcase. The sound was loud, final, like closing a book. By 11 o'clock, I was ready to leave. Carried my one bag down the stairs. Each step felt heavy. In the living room, Jessica sat on my couch. My couch that I had saved money to buy. Her feet were on my coffee table. She had a drink in her hand. Even though it was morning, she stared at the TV. She didn't look at me. She didn't say anything. Not even goodbye. It was like I was invisible. David stood by the kitchen door. His hands held the door frame tight. His fingers were white from holding so hard. "Grandma!" Lily ran to me, her little feet making soft sounds on the floor. She hugged my legs tight. "Where are you going?" she asked. Her small hands touched my face. I knelt down so we were the same height. I hugged her close. "Grandma has to go away for a little while, sweetie." "But why?" Her eyes were so big and confused. Sometimes grown-ups need space. It was hard to talk. My throat felt tight. I kissed her forehead. She smelled like strawberry soap. "I love you so much." I stood up, picked up my suitcase. I walked to my front door, opened it. I closed it behind me with a soft click. I stood on my porch. The porch I had built with my own hands. I had painted it, fixed the boards, swept it 1,000 times. Now I stood outside looking at my house like I didn't belong there. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, my hands on the wheel. I couldn't make myself drive away. Finally I started the car. I drove away from my house, away from my life. The city had many apartments for rent, signs on every corner. Found one that was cheap, $200 a month. The landlord was a tired woman. She looked at my driver's license quickly. She gave me papers to sign. "Month to month okay?" she asked. "Most people want to stay longer." "Month to month is perfect," I said. I wrote my name on the paper. "I won't be here long." She gave me keys. She pointed to the 3rd floor. I paid her with my credit card. I climbed the stairs to a small room. It looked like a hotel room that nobody decorated. Empty white walls, bed, small table, nothing else. I put my suitcase on the bed. I sat next to it. The quiet was so loud. No Lily laughing. No TV sounds. No David walking through rooms. Just me. And the big, empty feeling of what had happened. That first day felt like walking through fog. Anne packed my things. I ordered food but couldn't eat it. I looked at my phone. No calls. No messages. They had erased me like I never existed. I didn't sleep that night either. Day 2 I walked around the city. Miles and miles. Past stores and parks. Past people living their normal lives. Everything felt far away. Like I was watching through thick glass. I found myself standing outside a flower shop. I used to love flowers. Used to have a garden. Now I just stared through the window, not going inside. I walked back to my apartment as the sun went down. My phone stayed silent. Day 3 morning a text came. "Mom, I'm sorry. Just give us some time." I read David's words over and over. Standing in the middle of my empty room. "Give us some time." I said the words out loud. Time for what? Time to enjoy my house. Time to use my furniture. Time to decide if they would let me come back. I set the phone down hard on the table. I opened my laptop. I looked at my important papers that I kept on my computer. The house papers with my name on them. 30 years of payment receipts. 30 years of me paying for that house. Every dollar came from my bank account. Name. My work. My money. I spread the papers across the table. I looked at dates and numbers. Proof that the house was mine. Proof that I built that life board by board. Dollar by dollar. Thought came to me. Clear and bright. like a light turning on in a dark room. Why did I leave my house? I stared at the house papers. My property. Name. My 30 years of hard work. And I walked away because Jessica told me to. The sad feelings that had covered me for 3 days started to crack. Under them, something harder came out. Anger, yes. But more than anger. Strength. Knowing what I needed to do. Picked up my phone. I looked at David's text one more time. I didn't answer him. Instead, I put the phone next to the house papers. Both of them reminded me of something important. Something I had forgotten. I wasn't the one who should have left. The fourth night was different. I wasn't drowning anymore. I was planning. I lay on the strange bed, looking at shadows on the ceiling from the streetlights outside. My mind was working. But tonight thinking felt good. I was seeing things clearly now. Each memory clicked into place like puzzle pieces. 3 years ago, David called. Mom, Jessica is having a baby. We need help with money. Just until the baby comes. I said yes right away. What grandmother wouldn't help? 6 months later, Jessica said at dinner. We're saving money for our own house. We need a few more months here. He nodded. Understood. Houses cost a lot of money. 1 year later, David mentioned. House prices are still high. You don't mind us staying longer, right? I waved my hand. Family helps family. 2 years in, Jessica announced, not asked. We should change your house. Make it more modern. My house. Her ideas. Each memory showed me getting smaller and smaller in my own home. From owner to guest to invisible. And I had paid for everything. Every single thing. While Jessica built her life, I paid all the bills. The electricity. The water. The food. Everything. I sat up when the sun started to rise. I felt awake and strong. I grabbed my laptop. I typed into the search box. Property lawyer near me. Many names appeared. I read carefully, looking for someone who understood house problems and family fights. One name made me stop. Margaret Torres. She helped people with property rights and family house conflicts. Free first meeting. Her picture showed a woman with kind eyes and gray hair. I clicked to request a meeting. I filled out the form. I pressed submit before I could change my mind. A message appeared. Next meeting available tomorrow at 2 o'clock. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From hope. The next afternoon, I stood outside Margaret Torres's office. A nice brick building with flowers in front. I got there 15 minutes early. Too nervous to wait in my car. The waiting room smelled like coffee and old books. Law books lined the walls. At exactly 2 o'clock, a door opened. Mrs. Carter. Margaret Torres was about 60 years old. Gray hair in a bun. A blue suit that looked professional but kind. Her handshake was strong. Come in, please. Her office was organized and comfortable. Certificates on the wall. Family photos on her desk. She pointed to a soft chair across from her desk. Tell me what brought you here. Start anywhere you want. I talked for 20 minutes. I didn't plan to talk so much. But once I started, everything poured out. How I let them move in when Lily was born. How Jessica slowly took over my house. How she told me what to do. How David stayed quiet. How Jessica gave me the choice to obey or leave. How David nodded and agreed with her. How I walked out of my own house with one suitcase. Margaret listened. She took some notes. Her face stayed calm and professional. But I saw something in her eyes. Understanding. Like she had heard stories like mine before. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Let me make sure I understand. You own the house completely. You finished paying for it 5 years ago. Only your name is on the house papers. You never added anyone else's name." She leaned back in her chair, tapped her pen on her notepad. "Mrs. Carter, you have a strong legal case. But I need to ask, are you sure you want to do this? This is your son. Your granddaughter." I didn't wait to answer. "I want my house back." Something changed in her face. Like she approved. Good. Being certain matters in these cases. Judges can tell when someone isn't sure. She explained the law in simple words. For family members living without a written agreement, I had to give them 30-day written notice to leave. If they didn't leave after 30 days, I could file papers with the court to make them leave. Total time 60 to 90 days. First, she said, pulling out a notepad, we collect proof. Bank statements showing you paid all the bills. Tax records. Everything in your name. Then we send the notice. If they fight back, we're ready with evidence. She told me her price. $3,500 to start. This would cover writing the notice and first court appearances. More work would cost more. I pulled out my checkbook without waiting. I wrote the amount. I tore the check out cleanly. I slid it across her desk. My hand was steady. Margaret took it. Then she said something unexpected. Mrs. Carter, I've handled many cases like this. The hardest part isn't the law. It's staying strong when family pressures you. They'll beg. They'll cry. They'll threaten. They'll try to make you feel guilty. Can you handle that? I thought of David's face at that dinner table. His slow nod agreeing with Jessica. They already did their worst. They threw me out of my own home. What else is there? Margaret's small smile told me I had passed a test. We'll find out. She handed me a printed list. Documents to gather. Timeline to follow. How to communicate. Everything goes through her unless absolutely necessary. She'd start writing the 30-day notice right away. Next meeting next week. At the door, she added. One more thing. This will get messy before it gets better. Get ready. Pause. Looked back at her. I'm already ready. I left Margaret's office with the list in my pocket. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. I had spent 3 years paying for everything while they paid for nothing. Now I had 1 week to prove it. The list Margaret gave me became like my best friend. Each morning I looked at it, checking off items as I collected them. Bank statements going back 3 years. I got them from my online banking. Property tax records from the county website. Electricity and water bills from my accounts. All with my name on them. I made a chart on my computer. I couldn't help myself. I liked things organized. Column 1 was dates. Column 2 was what the bill was for. Column 3 was how much it cost. Column 4 was the proof paper. The numbers grew and grew. They told a clear story. House payments before it was paid off. Property taxes, $6,000 every year. House insurance, $1,800 yearly. Electricity and water and gas, $400 every month. Repairs, improvements, maintenance. Total over 3 years, $85,000. Money paid by Jessica and David. 0. Nothing. The chart told the story better than words. Middle of the week, I was looking through old emails for proof. Found something else. Messages from David I had forgotten about. Requests for help with money. March 2023. Mom, can you pay the electric bill this month? I'll pay you back soon. July 2023. Need $500 for Lily's daycare. We'll pay back next week. December 2023. Could you handle the property taxes this year? Money is tight with holiday gifts. None of it ever paid back. Ever. Temporary became forever. And I had been too nice to notice. I sent the emails to Margaret. Her answer came within an hour. Perfect. Print and save. Shows they kept depending on your money. Thursday afternoon, Margaret called. I looked up David's public records. Standard check for these cases. Found something interesting. I put down my coffee. What? 4 unpaid debts from people he owes money to. Total $28,000. 2 credit card companies. 1 car loan. 1 business debt. Dates from 2022 to 2024. I sat there processing this information. $28,000 in debt while living free in my house. This might explain why he's so determined to stay, Margaret continued. He has nowhere else he can afford. You've been his shelter. His safety. After hanging up, I stared at my phone for a long time. David's quiet acceptance suddenly made sense. I wasn't just convenient. I was necessary. And people hate those they depend on. Friday morning my phone made a sound. Text from David. A photo of Lily smiling. She held a crayon drawing. Stick figures. One labeled Grandma, in David's handwriting. Words beneath. She asks about you every day. I stared at Lily's face. My chest hurt. Sharp and immediate. But I noticed what the message didn't say. No apology. No mention of what happened. Just trying to make me feel guilty through my granddaughter. Type carefully. Tell her grandma loves her very much. Nothing about coming home. Nothing about forgiveness. Just the truth. I loved Lily. That hadn't changed. What changed was I wouldn't be a doormat to stay close to her. Saturday, I delivered everything to Margaret's office. A big binder organized by categories. Colored tabs separating sections. Bank statements. House papers. Tax records. Bills. Email printouts. Repair receipts. Margaret flipped through it. She looked impressed. This is excellent documentation. If they fight anything, we're ready. She showed me the notice. Formal legal words citing state laws. Giving David and Jessica until a specific date 30 days away to leave the property. I read it twice. My hand shook slightly when I signed the paper giving permission. Just a tremor. But Margaret noticed. Second thoughts. No. I steadied my hand. Just making it real. Monday morning, she said. My assistant sends this by certified mail with tracking. 2 copies. One to David. One to Jessica. Legal rules require both residents receive notice. Monday came. Margaret texted. Notices sent. Delivery scheduled for this afternoon. I tried staying distracted. I went grocery shopping. I cleaned my apartment. I tried to read a book. But my phone stayed in my pocket. Volume turned up. I was waiting. 4:30 in the afternoon. I was at a coffee shop when my phone started vibrating non-stop. Pulled it out. Missed call from David. Another. Jessica's name. Again. Numbers I didn't know. Them trying different phones probably. I set the phone on the table. Watched it light up like Christmas lights. Didn't answer. Didn't call back. Just watched. Within 3 hours, 111 missed calls. Counted them. Text messages flooded in. Call me. What is this? Mom, please. You can't do this. I sipped my coffee. Let them panic. Margaret had been clear. No talking directly to them. Everything through her. By 8 o'clock, the phone finally went quiet. One voicemail from David. I waited 10 minutes before listening. Got myself ready. His voice sounded broken. Mom, we got a letter from your lawyer. Says we have to leave in 30 days. Is this real? How can you do this to us? To Lily. Please call me. Please. We need to talk. This has to be a mistake. I listened once. Deleted it. Set the phone down. His desperation was real. But he still didn't understand. Or wouldn't admit what they had done. No mention of Jessica's order to obey or leave. No mention of his silent agreement. Just shock that I was fighting back. I opened my laptop. Emailed Margaret. They received the notice. As expected, panic. Her response came immediately. Don't talk to them. All communication through me. You're doing great. Type back. Understood. They can call all they want. I'm not answering. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time since that dinner, since the ultimatum, a real smile crossed my face. Not happiness exactly. Something harder. Satisfaction. The feeling of someone who's been pushed around finally pushing back. They'd spent 3 years treating me like I didn't matter in my own home. And now, watching my phone finally go silent, I realized they were just beginning to understand what that choice would cost them. The next evening, when David's name appeared on my screen again, I was ready. I let the phone ring twice before answering. Not because I was unsure. 'Cause I was in control. Mom! His voice exploded through the phone. Desperate. How can you kick us out? We're your family. We have a child. I stayed silent. Let him exhaust himself. Words tumbling over each other. Breathing hard between sobs. Then I heard the struggle. David protesting. The phone changing hands. Jessica's voice came on. Trying to sound calm. But strained underneath. Listen, we can work this out. Just talk to me. My voice came out ice cold. No anger. No emotion. Just facts. I sent an official 30-day notice to leave. You have 1 month to find another place. The house is mine. Her breathing changed. I could hear the shock that I wouldn't negotiate. Wouldn't soften. You can't be serious. We have rights. Use them. My lawyer is waiting. Her voice rose to a shout. You'll regret this. I'll make sure you never see Lily again. The threat about Lily hit hard somewhere in my chest. But I didn't argue. Simply said, see you in court. Hung up. The next afternoon, Jessica texted demanding we meet in person. Margaret advised against it when I called her. But I agreed. On my terms. I chose a coffee shop downtown. Afternoon. Weekday. People around as witnesses. Professional place. Got there first. Took a table with my back to the wall. Clear view of the door. David and Jessica arrived 15 minutes late. Trying to show power. Jessica wore a fancy dress. Trying to look important. David's eyes were red and puffy. They sat across from me. The table became a war zone. Jessica started with pressure. This is ridiculous. Or family. You're destroying our relationship over nothing. Over nothing. Kept my voice level. You told me to obey or leave. Left. Now I'm taking back what's mine. He changed tactics. Fake niceness. I was having a bad day. You know, stress makes people say things. Can't we just forget it? I stayed silent. Let her struggle. Then bargaining. What if we pay rent? We can work out an agreement. You haven't paid for anything in 3 years. Why would that change? Her voice dropped, almost begging. Where are we supposed to go? We don't have money for a deposit and first month's rent. During all this, David said nothing. He stared at his untouched coffee, tears streaming silently. I watched him realize something. Maybe what his silence at that dinner had caused. He wasn't defending Jessica anymore. He was drowning in understanding that he chose wrong. But it was too late. I looked at him directly. David, 3 years ago I let you move in when Lily was born. I paid for everything while you built your lives. I asked for nothing but basic respect. Instead, you watched her throw me out and said nothing. His voice came barely audible. Mom, I was scared. Scared of what? Of standing up for your mother. That's exactly why I'm doing this. Sensing she was losing, Jessica played her last card. Leaned forward. Voice low and threatening. You want to play hardball. Fine. You'll never see Lily again. We'll move far away. She won't even remember you. The coffee shop noise faded. I stood slowly. Picked up my jacket. Looked at Jessica with something close to pity. Using your daughter as a weapon. That tells me everything I need to know about you. I looked at David. And you're going to let her? His face fell apart. But he didn't contradict her. I walked out. Left them at the table. Behind me, I heard David's voice. What have we done? Outside, I paused to breathe. My hands shook slightly. The Lily threat had hit hard. But I didn't turn back. Through the window, I could see David crying harder. Saying something to Jessica. For the first time, he looked angry at his wife instead of scared. Jessica looked defensive. Argumentative. The crack in their teamwork was showing. I walked to my car. Pulled out my phone. Texted Margaret. Meeting done. Jessica threatened to keep Lily from me. Should I be worried? Her reply came within seconds. Document everything. Empty threats can hurt them in custody situations. I realized then Jessica had just made a big mistake. Through the coffee shop window, I watched David gesturing angrily at Jessica. The first time I'd seen him fight her instead of hide from her. And I knew something had shifted that couldn't be undone. The envelope from the county court arrived 7 days after I'd walked out of that coffee shop. My first thought was, here it comes. I stood in my apartment building's mailroom sorting mail. Between advertisements and bills, the county seal caught my eye. Official. Scary looking. Exactly what Jessica had threatened. Opened it right there. Lawsuit. Jessica was suing me for wrongful eviction, demanding $50,000 for emotional pain and moving expenses. The papers said we had an agreement for them to live there forever. I took pictures of every page with my phone. Texted them to Margaret. Her response came within minutes. Don't worry. Typical scare tactic. No merit. Can you come to my office this afternoon? Margaret's office felt comfortable now. Familiar. She had the lawsuit printed already, marked with yellow highlighter and notes in the margins. This is what desperate people do when they have no power. She flipped pages. She's claiming you agreed verbally. Emotional pain. Saying you violated tenant rights. Problem for Jessica. Verbal agreements need proof. She has none. You have documents showing ownership and that you paid everything. How long will this delay things? Hearing in 2 weeks. When the judge throws out her suit, which is very likely, your eviction continues. If anything, this helps us by showing her bad behavior. Over the next 2 weeks we prepared. Margaret organized evidence into presentation format. Timeline of events. Financial records. Email trail of David's requests for money. Absence of any written agreement. Papers showing I owned the house alone. She wrote a response citing state property law. Past cases about owner-occupied homes. Rules about proving verbal contracts. One afternoon she coached me. If you testify, be factual. No emotion. Just dates, amounts, documents. Let the evidence speak. The hearing day arrived. County courthouse downtown. I wore a nice dress. Arrived with Margaret 30 minutes early. Jessica appeared with a lawyer who looked unprepared. Thin folder versus Margaret's organized binder. We sat at opposite tables. The judge entered. An older woman with a no-nonsense look. Jessica's lawyer presented first. Rambling about family hardship. Good faith reliance on mother-in-law's kindness. Understanding of permanent living situation. No documents, just verbal claims. Margaret's turn was step by step. Methodical. She showed the house deed on a screen. My name only. Showed bank statements. All payments by me. Displayed emails. David requesting temporary help. Promising repayment. Pointed out the absence of any written agreement. 7 minutes. That's all it took. The judge's questions were sharp. Where's your evidence of this verbal agreement? Witnesses. Written communications showing the terms. Jessica's lawyer fumbled. Your Honor, it was understood between family members. Good faith reliance. Understanding isn't evidence. The judge looked at the documents Margaret had submitted. Plaintiff's claim is dismissed. No evidence of verbal agreement. Defendant's eviction notice is valid and can be enforced. The 30-day notice remains in effect. Plaintiffs must leave by the date specified in the notice. The gavel hit the desk. 30 minutes total. Outside the courthouse, I felt lightness I hadn't experienced in weeks. Margaret smiled. Genuine. Not just professional. That was textbook perfect. Jessica's lawyer should have told her not to file. We walked toward the parking area. Margaret paused. Do you have plans? I know a coffee place nearby. Good coffee. I recognized this wasn't just professional courtesy. I'd like that. We walked 3 blocks to a small cafe. Sat by the window. Conversation started about the case but drifted. Margaret asked about my life before all this. My hobbies. My dreams. Genuinely interested. Asking follow-up questions. I asked about her law practice. How she ended up helping people with property disputes. Coffee became 90 minutes. Margaret mentioned she'd lost her husband 5 years ago. Just like me. My husband gone. Leaving a hole. Both of us had thrown ourselves into work afterward. work success, personal loneliness. We discovered we both loved old movies. Margaret mentioned The Wizard of Oz. I lit up. One of my favorites, Dorothy Finding Home. We both enjoyed gardening. Margaret, I haven't gardened since my husband died. We used to plant vegetables every spring. I stopped too, I said. Didn't seem right doing it alone. The conversation had depth that surprised both of us. Not small talk. Real connection between two people who'd been through loss and understood what it meant. As we prepared to leave, Margaret said something that shifted everything. Helen, I want to tell you something professionally first. You're doing the right thing. Not the easy thing. The right thing. Justice isn't cruelty. It's making things fair again when someone has taken more than their share. I pause. But personally, I admire your courage. Most people would have stayed and let themselves be walked on. You chose dignity. I met her eyes. I had a good lawyer who believed the law mattered. And I have a good client who believes she deserves respect. The moment hung between us. Both of us recognizing this was more than lawyer-client relationship. Neither rushing it. We exchanged personal cell numbers. Not just office contacts. Made plans for coffee again. Maybe gardening together when spring came. As we parted in the parking area, Margaret touched my arm briefly. The next few weeks might get harder. Jessica knows she's lost legal options. People do unpredictable things when cornered. Call me if anything happens. Office or cell. Doesn't matter. He nodded. Driving back to my apartment, I felt something unfamiliar. Not just the satisfaction of legal victory, but the warmth of real human connection. Someone who saw me not as a wallet or an obstacle, but as a person worth knowing. As I pulled into my apartment's parking lot, phone showing Margaret's number now saved as Margaret's cell, I felt something I hadn't expected to find in the middle of this fight. The possibility that losing my old life might mean finding a better one. The 30-day deadline arrived on a Tuesday morning. When my phone showed no messages from David or Jessica, I knew exactly what it meant. They weren't leaving on their own. I texted Margaret early. They didn't leave. Her response came within seconds. Expected. Time for formal eviction filing. Courthouse at 10 o'clock. This was the next step. Moving from notice to legal force. At the county courthouse filing window, Margaret and I submitted the formal eviction papers. I wrote a check for $285. Watched the clerk stamp our documents with an official court date. 3 weeks out. Early June. The final battle. She'll fight this, I said as we walked back to the parking area. Of course she will. Margaret tucked the stamped copies into her briefcase. But Helen, we need to understand what we're really dealing with. If she's this desperate to stay, there's more we don't know. She recommended a financial investigator. Someone named Gerald Martinez. Someone she'd worked with before. $2,000 fee for 3 days of investigation. I hired him that afternoon. 2 days later, Gerald called with findings that explained everything. Mrs. Carter, your son took out a loan using your house address as his residence. $95,000 from a predatory lending company. I sat down hard in my apartment chair. He used my house. Yes. The money went toward opening something called David Carter Consulting. The business failed within 6 months. Now he can't pay back the loan. The lender is pursuing collection. There are also multiple credit card debts and an unpaid car loan. After hanging up, I stared at the wall for a long time. He'd used my house, my home, my security, as his ticket to borrow money for a failing dream. At Margaret's office the next day, we reviewed Gerald's complete report. Documentation of the loan, the failed business registration, the mounting legal actions against David and Jessica. This explains everything, Margaret said, flipping pages. He's not just broke. He's facing multiple lawsuits and possibly legal trouble if he misrepresented his financial situation on the loan application. What do we do with this information? Margaret looked up. We can, through proper legal channels, inform his creditors about his current housing situation. increases pressure, forces his hand. I hesitated. This felt aggressive, different from simply taking back my house. Margaret read my face. She threatened to take Lily from you. They threw you from your own home. This is justice, not revenge. He created this situation. We're just making sure the consequences find him. I nodded slowly. Do it. Margaret drafted proper legal letters, sending them through legal service companies to maintain separation. The pressure was about to increase from multiple directions. 2 days later, near midnight, my phone rang. David. I almost didn't answer, then reconsidered. His voice was wrecked when I picked up. Mom, I need to talk to you. Jessica doesn't know I'm calling. I sat on the edge of my bed. What happened? His story tumbled out. A debt collector had showed up at the house that afternoon demanding payment. When David asked Jessica what it was about, she got angry. She pressed for answers. He finally admitted to the loan, the failed business, the mounting debts, but he blamed me. Said if I hadn't abandoned them, none of this would have happened. She's furious at me, David said, his crying turning to something else. For months we're drowning in debt she didn't know about. I thought I could fix it before she found out. I thought your help would solve everything. His voice broke. Mom, I'm so sorry. I chose her demands over you. I let her throw you out of your own house. And the whole time I was lying to both of you. This was different. Not manipulation. Not begging. Actual recognition of what he'd done. David, what are you going to do? Long pause. I don't know. I have Lily to think about. I can't just separate from Jessica with nowhere to go. Closed my eyes. The eviction hearing is in 2 weeks. You need to prepare. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a while. Then texted Margaret. David called. He's learning about his debts coming due. He's cracking. Her response. Can I come by? Not lawyer stuff. Just checking in. 20 minutes later, Margaret arrived with takeout containers. Chinese food. Nothing fancy. We sat on my small couch eating from paper boxes. How are you really doing? She asked. I considered the question honestly. 3 months ago I was living in my house, helping my family, thinking I was doing the right thing. Now I'm in a studio apartment fighting them in court. My son just apologized for the first time. I don't know if I should feel victorious or just tired. Margaret set down her container. You can feel both. You can be right and still hurt. She told me about her husband's final days. How she'd learned that doing the hard thing doesn't mean it stops being hard. I talked about my husband. About the years of learning to be alone. The conversation was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with strategy or legal maneuvering. When she left near midnight, she paused at my door. You're doing the right thing. But it's okay if it doesn't feel easy. It's getting more complicated. The right things usually do. After she left, I stood at my studio window overlooking the city lights. My phone showed David's contacts still on screen. In my house across town. He was discovering his wife's anger. Jessica was fielding calls from debt collectors and lawyers. The eviction hearing loomed 2 weeks away. Everything was coming together. Through my studio window, the city lights blurred in the late drizzle. And somewhere across town in my house, 3 people were facing truths they could no longer ignore. Including the fact that in 2 weeks, a judge would decide who stayed and who left. The 2 weeks before the eviction hearing passed in a strange rhythm. Working during the day. Legal preparation in the evenings. And 3 nights that felt more like friendship deepening into something else with Margaret. Dinner at a quiet restaurant where we talked more about classic movies than courtroom tactics. A walk along the river as the sun set. An evening at her house watching The Wizard of Oz. Sitting close on her couch, her hand briefly holding mine during the scene where Dorothy clicks her heels. Nothing rushed but undeniably growing. David texted twice more. Tentative messages. Can we talk before the hearing? And I need advice about something important. I responded carefully. Not encouraging dependence but not shutting him down either. The morning of the hearing, I woke early in my studio apartment. Put on my best dress. Navy blue, white collar, conservative but strong. Looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. 62 years old. Fighting to take back my own house from my own family. Surreal. I met Margaret at the courthouse an hour before the hearing. She wore a sharp gray suit. Carried her organized binder. In a conference room we reviewed strategy one final time. Remember, she said, Jessica's lawyer will try emotional appeals. Don't react. Let me handle it. I'm ready. She touched my hand briefly. You are. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Family court division designed for these disputes. Margaret and I sat at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, Jessica arrived with a lawyer. Different one than before. This one looked even less prepared. Discount legal services. Wrinkled suit. Thin folder. Then David entered separately. He sat in the gallery behind Jessica, but not next to her. Wouldn't make eye contact with either of us. The positioning told the whole story. Judge Patricia Morrison entered. The same woman from the earlier hearing. She recognized the case immediately. The Carter eviction matter. Let's proceed efficiently. Jessica's attorney presented first. Pure emotional manipulation. Your Honor, we're talking about a young family with a 4-year-old child being thrown onto the street. Mrs. Carter is the child's grandmother. What kind of woman evicts her own grandchild? Margaret stood. Objection. Facts, not character speculation. Sustained. Counsel, stick to legal arguments. The lawyer stumbled. Presented no real evidence. Just claims about hardship and family bonds. Mentioned the verbal agreement already dismissed at the earlier hearing. 10 minutes and Jessica's defense collapsed under its own weakness. Margaret's turn was step by step. Precise. Your Honor, the facts are straightforward. Mrs. Carter owns the property outright. Deed entered as evidence. She provided proper 30-day notice. Notice entered as evidence. Defendants failed to leave. Pause. However, Mrs. Carter is not heartless. She has repeatedly offered to allow her son and granddaughter to remain in the house if Mrs. Jessica Carter vacates. This offer has been rejected. Margaret displayed emails on the courtroom screen. My offers to help David. All documented. All ignored. Additionally, Mrs. Carter is willing to provide her son with reasonable time to secure alternative housing and even financial help for deposits. But Mrs. Jessica Carter must leave. Defendants chose to remain together rather than accept this compromise. Judge Morrison made notes. Then looked directly at Jessica. Is it true Mrs. Carter offered to let your husband and child stay if you left? Jessica shifted. She's trying to split up my family. That's not what I asked. Did she make that offer? Yes or no? Yes, but... Thank you. The judge turned to David. Mr. Carter, do you wish to make a statement? David stood. His voice came quiet but clear. Your Honor, I would like to accept my mother's offer. My daughter and I need time to find housing, but my wife should leave. The courtroom went silent. Jessica's head snapped toward him. What? David didn't look at her. Judge Morrison nodded. Given the circumstances, I order defendants to vacate the property within 14 days. However, I'm willing to allow Mr. David Carter and his minor child to remain temporarily under Mrs. Helen Carter's discretion while he secures housing. Mrs. Jessica Carter must vacate immediately. The gavel struck. In the courthouse hallway, Jessica exploded at David. You're siding with her after everything. David's voice stayed quiet but firm. After everything you demanded. The controlling. Using Lily as a weapon. I'm done. Margaret and I stood several feet away. Jessica noticed us. Started to approach. Margaret stepped slightly forward. Protective stance. Jessica stopped. Realized she had no move left. She looked at me with pure hatred. You destroyed my marriage. Kept my voice calm. No, you did that yourself. I just stopped letting you destroy my life. She turned and walked away alone. After she left, David approached me tentatively. "Mom, can we talk?" Margaret gave us space. Moved down the hallway. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness," David said, tears streaming. "I chose her demands over you. I was weak and stupid and scared. But I need help for Lily. Not for me. I know I don't deserve it. But she shouldn't suffer for my mistakes." I saw my son clearly for the first time in years. Not the man who betrayed me. The frightened person who made terrible choices. I opened my arms. David collapsed into them, sobbing. "You can stay," I said quietly. "Both of you, until you're back on your feet. But things will be different." He nodded against my shoulder. "Thank you. I'll make it right. I promise." That evening, I drove to Margaret's house for dinner. Something we'd planned before knowing the hearing's outcome. Her house was modest but warm. Garden visible through the back windows. Carefully maintained with roses and vegetables. I told her about David's decision. The judge's ruling. Jessica's exit. "How do you feel?" she asked. Considered. Relieved. Hopeful. All at once. That's honest. We sat on her deck as the summer evening faded. Drinking iced tea. Watching light fade over her garden. "What happens now?" Margaret asked. "I move back home in 2 weeks. Help David figure out his life. Rebuild our relationship." I looked at her. "And I'd like to see where this goes. If you're interested." Margaret smiled. "I'm very interested." The evening settled around us. Comfortable and full of possibility. As the evening light faded over Margaret's garden, and our conversation drifted from legal victories to planting plans and favorite books, I realized I wasn't just taking back my house. I was building something new from the ruins of what I'd lost. 14 days after the court ruling, I stood in my own driveway for the first time in 4 months. Watching Jessica throw boxes into her car with angry, careless movements that told me this wouldn't be easy. Margaret's advice echoed. Document everything. I walked through each room with my phone camera up, filming everything. Jessica loading boxes, disputed items, the condition of my house. In the living room, I found her holding my vintage clock. The one I'd inherited from my mother. "That stays," I said calmly. He turned face red. "I'm taking what's mine." "That clock stays. The dishes in the kitchen stay. Take only what you brought." "You can't tell me." I held up my phone, showing her the photos I'd taken before they moved in. "Try me." She set the clock down hard enough that I winced. An hour later, I caught her loading my gardening tools into her car. Professional-grade shovel. Big. Hose. Hundreds of dollars worth. I called the police non-emergency line. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. I showed them documentation. Photos. Receipts. The court order saying Jessica must leave. "Ma'am," one officer said to Jessica, professional but firm. "Take only your personal belongings. The court order is clear." Jessica tried to argue, but they weren't interested. One officer stayed to watch the rest of her packing. By evening, Jessica had loaded far less than she'd hoped. She stood in the driveway, glaring at me, with the officer still present. "You'll regret this. You destroyed my family." Kept my voice level. "You destroyed your own family when you tried to control everyone. I just stopped letting you control mine." She drove away alone. 3 days later, David met with a family lawyer Margaret had recommended. Not Margaret herself. That would be a conflict. But someone good. He filed for divorce. Irreconcilable differences and financial deception. He requested primary custody of Lily with supervised visits for Jessica. The same week he returned to work. He'd kept his teaching certificate current. Found a part-time position at a local school. 3 days a week. I helped with Lily on his work days. The house slowly changed from war zone back to home. Late nights, David and I talked at the kitchen table after Lily was asleep. Honest conversations about fear, manipulation, weakness, what it means to choose dignity over false peace. One evening he asked me to sit on the back porch. Lily was asleep upstairs. I need to say something, and I need you to really hear it. His voice was steady despite tears. I was terrified of being alone. After Lily was born, I felt trapped. Jessica made me feel like I couldn't survive without her. So when she said jump, I asked how high. Even when it meant betraying you. He looked at me directly. You were the one person who never manipulated me. Never made me doubt myself. And I threw you away because I was scared. Fear makes us do things we never imagined, I said. But you made a different choice in that courtroom. That's what matters. You taught me something, David wiped his eyes. Boundaries aren't mean. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. I'm teaching Lily that now. By late July, Margaret had become a regular presence. Dinner twice a week. Sunday afternoons helping Lily with a vegetable garden project in the backyard. Lily adored her. Called her Miss Margaret. Asked when she was coming over next. The relationship between Margaret and me deepened naturally. Comfortable, stable, built on respect and shared values. Meanwhile, Jessica's situation became known. David's creditors found her. Filed claims. She'd co-signed on several of his debts. Her own credit cards were maxed. She'd moved in with her parents. Posted bitter messages on social media blaming everyone but herself. But they read as desperate deflection. Nobody believed her. Late July evening, I sat alone in my living room. Lily and David were asleep upstairs. Margaret had gone home but would return tomorrow. I thought about Jessica. Probably in her parents' basement. Buried in debt. Professionally embarrassed. Separated from her daughter. I'd expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt only peace. Not the peace of crushing an enemy. The peace of restored order. I didn't destroy Jessica. Her controlling behavior. Her manipulation. Her threats did that. I simply stopped being collateral damage. I texted Margaret. Thank you for everything. Her response came quickly. You did the hard part. I just showed you the tools. Type back. Tools are useless without the will to use them. Thank you, Margaret. Then we make a good team, she replied. The last weekend of July, the three of us worked in the garden. Lily with her toy shovel. David planting tomatoes and peppers. Me spreading mulch. Kneeling in the dirt. Hands in soil. The work I loved. Lily looked up. Grandma, why did Mommy leave? First time she'd asked directly. David glanced at me, uncertain. I chose my words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt people. Your mommy made some of those choices. But your daddy made a brave choice to keep you safe and happy. That's what matters. Lily seemed satisfied. Returned to digging. David mouthed thank you across the garden bed. The afternoon sun was warm. For the first time in months, the house felt like home. As Lily pressed her small handprint into the fresh soil beside the tomato plants we'd just put in, David smiled at me across the garden bed. And I realized we weren't just restoring the garden. We were planting seeds of something better than what we'd lost. The tomatoes and peppers we'd planted in July were growing now. And as I stood on my deck watching Margaret laugh with Lily through the kitchen window, I realized the garden wasn't the only thing that had taken root. Early August evening. Lily's 5th birthday was tomorrow. Tonight, a pre-celebration dinner. Just family. I grilled vegetables and chicken on my deck. Skills from years of hosting. Inside, Margaret helped Lily frost cupcakes. Lily's hands covered in pink frosting. Margaret laughing at the mess. David set the table. Moving easily between kitchen and deck. The scene was domestic. Comfortable. Nothing like the tension that had filled this house 5 months ago. Through the window I watched my son happy. My granddaughter giggling. And Margaret. Someone who became family not through blood but through choice and time. We sat for dinner as summer evening light slanted across the deck. Lily chattered about party plans. Between bites, David shared news. I found an apartment. 2 bedrooms. Good school district. 20 minutes from here. He was nervous, watching for my reaction. That's wonderful, I said genuinely. When's move-in? September 1st. I've been saving from my paychecks. He hesitated. But I'd like to help with the deposit. David, you've already. 8,000. Consider it a loan if that makes you feel better. But I'm calling it a gift. His eyes filled. Thank you for everything. Margaret added quietly. You're doing the hard work. The apartment is just the next step. After Lily ran inside to play, the three adults remained at the table. David looked at me. I need to say something. I've been practicing. Mom, I'm sorry I didn't protect you when Jessica told you to leave. I should have stood up. Instead, I nodded like a coward. His voice stayed steady despite tears. You taught me what dignity looks like. You didn't yell or break things or play victim. You just stood up for yourself legally and fairly. I'm teaching Lily that now. That boundaries aren't mean. They're necessary. I reached across the table, took his hand. You learned it when it mattered. That courtroom moment when you chose differently. That's when you became the father Lily needs. Margaret mentioned she'd heard through professional channels. Jessica filed bankruptcy last week, liquidating everything. Moved to Arizona, trying to start over where her reputation hadn't followed yet. Court-ordered visits with Lily were supervised. Limited to video calls twice monthly until she completed parenting classes and anger management. She hadn't completed a single session. Part of me feels guilty, David said. She's lost everything. She lost everything because of her own choices, I said. You didn't create her debts. You didn't try to control everyone. You didn't throw your mother from her own home. She did those things. Margaret nodded. Consequences aren't punishment. They're just the natural result of actions. She can rebuild if she chooses. Just not at someone else's expense. Lily went to bed around 8. David tucked her in upstairs. Margaret and I alone on the deck. The city lights visible in the distance. This is nice, Margaret said. Being part of this. You are part of this. Lily asks about you every day. David trusts you. And you. Pause. Margaret smiled. I didn't expect to find someone again. After my husband died, I thought that chapter was closed. I thought the same, Margaret said. Then a 62-year-old woman walked into my office with a property dispute and strength I hadn't seen in years. We sat in comfortable silence. I'm not suggesting we rush anything, I said. But I want you to know this isn't casual for me. It's not casual for me either, Margaret said. We have time to figure out what it becomes. David returned to the deck. Lily called down from her bedroom window. Grandma. Miss Margaret. Dance. A game we'd started last week. Lily loved watching us dance to music from my old record player. I looked at Margaret. Shall we? She laughed. Why not? I started the vintage player. Nat King Cole's Unforgettable. Margaret and I danced slowly on the deck under August stars. David watched from his chair, smiling genuinely for the first time in years. Lily clapped from her window. The scene was simple but deep. A family rebuilt not on obligation or manipulation, but on respect, boundaries, and choice. As Margaret rested her head on my shoulder, my mind drifted through the past 5 months. March, thrown from my own home. Betrayed by silence. April, learning to fight back legally. May, watching careful strategy work. June, courtroom victory that felt like restored order. July, new beginnings. August, standing here with a family I'd never imagined. They pushed me out of my own house. I could have broken. Instead, I chose to stand up. Not with revenge, but with justice. And in fighting for fairness, I found something I'd stopped hoping for. Love, respect, and family that's chosen rather than forced. The song ended. David applauded softly. Lily had fallen asleep at her window, head on the sill. Margaret and I separated, still holding hands. I should head home, she said. You could stay. Guest room. Margaret considered. Mile. Let's take it one day at a time. But yes, I'd like that. I'll make up the guest bed, David said, heading inside. I stood alone on my deck for a moment. My house. My son healing. My granddaughter safe. A woman who saw me not as a resource but as a partner. The garden thriving. The evening warm. Everything I fought for wasn't behind me. Standing alone on my deck for just a moment, I looked at the thriving garden, the warm lights from inside, and the August stars above. And I understood that what I'd fought for wasn't behind me. It was right here, blooming in the present and stretching into a future I finally got to choose. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to Granny's Voice. And share your thoughts about this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the video on the left. Thank you for watching.